Just in case you've been living under a rock the past 3 years, cars are grossly overinflated. We now live in a world where new Ford Broncos sell for $20,000 or even $30,000 over their MSRP. Even used Honda Civics, 2018, 2019 Civics are trading for the exact same amount of money that they were when they were brand new. And the story is the exact same when you look at used cars also. If you go on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace hoping to find a good deal, cars that used to be $2,000 to $3,000 are now $4,000 to $5,000. And that forces you to save up almost double what you would have had to just a couple of years ago. And not only that, but the buyer's ability to negotiate has also been drastically reduced. These days, an asking price is less of an asking price and more like a suggested starting bid. So given all of that, any financially responsible adult would just wait it out. There's no reason to buy a car right now in this crazy seller's market. But I'm not a financially responsible adult. I'm a 19-year-old college student, and I wanted a new daily driver, because as much fun as it is to drive the Corvette every day, it does get a little bit tiring with how low to the ground it is, how harsh the suspension is, the manual transmission. As much as it's fun, and it's a great car, especially for the money, it's not the best car for daily use. So, I began my search, combing through all the different classifieds in my area, trying to find a car that was under $4,000, in decent condition. And I wasn't looking for a perfect car, but I didn't want it to be destroyed. And also a car with relatively low mileage. I was okay with, between 100 and 150,000. I wasn't really looking for anything above 150,000 miles though. But as a car guy, there's that feeling that I'm sure a lot of you guys have too, where if you're trying to find a new car for yourself, you want it to be something that's at least somewhat interesting. Whether that be a special edition trim level, or maybe a car finished in a rare color, or even seeking out that hard-to-find manual transmission version. Whatever the case is, I didn't want to get a cookie-cutter daily driver. So that meant I wasn't really getting excited about the Toyota Camrys, Avalons, Honda Civics or Accords, Nissan Altimas, Maximas. None of those reliable Japanese cars that would typically be a good idea for a daily, it just wasn't really sparking my interest. So, a few months went by, I kept looking almost every night, scrolling through hundreds of listings, but still nothing. Until one night, it was probably a little bit past midnight. And don't judge me, I know you guys scroll through car listings late at night too. But late that night, I found something on Facebook Marketplace that went against every rational, reasonable, and sensible bone in my body. But this car was just too cool to pass up on, and my inner car enthusiast took over. So at the end of the day, I bought a Ford with 500,000 miles on it. Well, here it is. And I know you're probably thinking, wait, that doesn't look like any Ford interior I've ever seen. And you'd be right, I stretched the truth a little bit. It's actually a Lincoln town car. But since Ford owns Lincoln, underneath all this 20-year-old luxury, it's just a Ford platform. It's built on what Ford called the Panther platform. And the Panther platform had some of the most reliable cars ever made. We're talking about the Ford Crown Victoria, the Mercury Grand Marquis, and the Mercury Marauder. Then you have this, the Lincoln Town Car. Now the Crown Victoria was the police interceptor of choice for hundreds of police precincts all across the country for over a decade. And this, the Lincoln Town Car, has been the livery car of choice for chauffeur companies all across the nation. These cars are known for being dependable, reliable, comfortable, easy to work on, and cheap to maintain. And this car is no different. It started its life in 2004, and just a couple years after that, a chauffeur company based out of Napa in California bought it to put into their fleet. So from then, 2006 until 2019, it was used by that company as a chauffeur car, where it likely drove business executives, wealthy individuals from winery to winery all across the Napa Valley. And over the course of its service as a chauffeur car, it racked up tons of miles. That's how it got up to about 460,000 miles. Now, what makes this car special? And why did it stand out from the hundreds of other listings I looked at while trying to find a car? Well, the first and most obvious reason is simply how many miles it has while maintaining such good of condition. The seats in this car are almost perfect. There's no tears, scratches, stains. The dashboard has no cracks in it. The radio works, the air conditioning blows cold. It even has an analog clock, which we all know is the sign of a true luxury car. And it drives really well. You would never know it had over 500,000 miles on it. And not only its interior condition, but the exterior condition as well is pretty good. Besides a few paint chips and scuffs on the front end of this car, it could pass as a 100,000 mile example. And especially the rear half of the car, it's almost perfect, not a scratch in the paint. But think about it, this car had to push through over 500,000 miles of air, dust, debris, and rocks just to get where it is today. And it still looks this good. And in addition to being in really good condition, both on the interior and exterior, it's also kind of a rare trim level. So the town car was offered in 3 distinct trim levels. You had the executive down at the bottom, then the signature, and then the ultimate up at the top. And within each of those 3 trims, you could choose whether you wanted an L version, which meant extended wheelbase. And this car happens to be the ultimate L. So it has all the amenities and creature comforts of the top of the line trim, and it has that extended wheelbase giving me 6 more inches of legroom in the back, which makes for one of the most luxurious rear seat experiences I've ever seen in a car. Speaking of paint, this car is actually finished in a cool one. It's called Charcoal Gray Metallic, and it's a welcome improvement over your standard white or black livery Lincoln Town car. But let me list some other cool features this car has. Front and rear heated seats, and there's a rear seat center console that allows you to control the radio, the climate control. There's even a little spot for one of those travel-sized tissue pouches. But that's not all that center console has to offer. There's even a button that lets the rear seat passenger put the front seat passenger's seat forward if they decide they want more legroom. Granted, I don't get to use that every day because I rarely ever get driven in this car. I'm usually the one driving it. So it's more of a party trick. But something I do use every day is the trunk. And there's this little button here on my left, and if I push it, the trunk opens up. But that's not all. If I push it again, the trunk actually closes by itself. Now on the surface, that isn't that crazy of a feature. Pretty much every new SUV or crossover has a power open close tailgate. But when's the last time you saw that feature on a sedan? And that's what makes it cool. And I forgot to mention it when we were back there on that bumpy road, but the air ride suspension that this car has eats up bumps like they're not even there. This is honestly one of the most comfortable cars to drive I've ever driven. And the town car only came with one engine. It's Ford's 4.6 liter single overhead cam V8, which makes about 240 horsepower, which is definitely nothing to laugh about. So it will get up and go if you want to. It has some passing power, but it's nothing crazy by modern standards. And because of that big old V8, it has been testing the depth of my pockets at the pump here with these insane gas prices. But it will get over 20 miles to the gallon if I'm sticking just to the highway. So for trips going up and down California, it's not that bad. Another reason I was drawn to this car in particular is because it's been maintained extremely well. Along with the purchase of this car, I got a folder about 1 inch thick with all the service records going all the way back to 2006. So there's a little gap there early on from 2004 to 2006 with that first owner, but from about 40,000 miles to 460,000 miles, I have service records for everything. And one of these days, I'm gonna make a video going through the service records, trying to see exactly how this car was able to make it to 500,000 miles. And hopefully what you can do with your car to get similar results. Reading through those service records briefly, I was able to find out that this car has a multitude of new parts on it as well. It has a new radiator, new battery terminal. The gauge cluster was taken out and rebuilt a few thousand miles ago. And something funny, I even found that it's on its 3rd water pump. You know, most cars go through 1 or 2, but this car, having gone so many miles, it's on its 3rd water pump. But of course, we have a little bit of a reality check here. At the end of the day, this is still a 500,000 mile Lincoln Town car, and there are some issues, so let's go over that. The steering wheel shows some of the most signs of wear. It's a little bit sticky and worn down. The clock, the backlight has burned out over the years, so I have a new one on order and I'll be replacing that soon. It has a few paint chips in the front end here and there. And ultimately, the powertrain of this car is just old and beat up. It does have a rebuilt transmission, so I'm hoping that'll be fine for a while. But at the end of the day, the engine still has 500,000 miles on it. So I do imagine at some point I'm gonna have to do some repairs on it, but that's totally fine. At the moment, it drives perfectly, no issues whatsoever. Alright, let's talk price. Now, I found this car listed for $5,000 over in Vacaville, but after meeting with the seller, we negotiated down a little bit, and ultimately I was able to purchase this car for $3,800. $3,800. That's a lot of car for the money. And so far I've put, I've put over 9,000 miles on it and couldn't be happier with the purchase. I think this is the perfect car for me. It checks all the boxes, and I've enjoyed every aspect of the ownership experience so far. Well, what does any of this have to do with you? If you're a young adult or a teenager looking for your first car, I would encourage you to not be too intimidated by this car market we're in right now. If you look long enough and hard enough, you can find a really good deal still. And also, don't necessarily be put off by high mileage. An abused 90,000 mile car will give you way more problems than a babied 500,000 mile car. Case in point. But if you're a car enthusiast looking for something, don't give up. It's just a matter of time. If you look long enough and hard enough, the right deal will come along and you'll find a great car at an awesome price. Thanks for watching.
If I'm being honest, loving you the hardest thing to do, so I keep to myself. I feel like I'm falling in and out of consciousness, yeah. Now we starting to talk, let's killing all the progress. Really hard to process, you treat me like an object. Baby, we toxic, can we stay on topic? I feel like we lost it, feel like we lost it. Take my love, don't waste it. Even though I don't mind waiting, latest my mind racing. What else I have to do, girl, to brace me? I only want you, yeah. I only want you, I only want you to pull me closer. Pull me closer.